Okay, welcome to the second video of this metronome creation thing that we have going on here. In the previous video, we made this thing here. We made the metronome, we made it look good. We created all of our elements here in the index HTML file, and then we styled it all up, and we had a lot of fun with the input styling for different browsers and stuff. But we're not going to be using any more of that stuff right now, so I'm going to close that down. I'm going to keep my index HTML open, and we're going to start writing some code. We're going to hook this up, so when you actually slide this slider, you will see the tempo update here, and when you click the buttons, the same thing. So so that's what we're going to get started on now. For that, we're going to go to our app.js file, and as you can see, we already linked to the script file here. So let's go to this one here, and then first of all, I just want to set up all of the references to the elements here, the tempo, display, the slider, the buttons, and the way to do that is let's just do the first one here. The first one we want is the tempo display. I'm gonna put them in constants here, and I am gonna go document query selector, and this one, if I remember correctly, it is just tempo it's called, but let's see. Metronome BPM display tempo, so that is the one that displays 140 right now. So we're just going to take that. It has a class name of tempo, so we're going to try about period and tempo. So we got that. We're going to do the same for all of the other things, the buttons here, and I'm not going to bore you with that, so I'm just going to type it out, and then I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so that's all. We got the tempo display, that's this one over here. We have the text, that is the one we're displaying down here. Right now it's just static, everything is. We have the decrease tempo button and the increase tempo, which is the minus and the plus button. And then we have the slider, of course. We have the start and the stop button, which we're going to use to start and stop the metronome. And subtract beats, that is the beats per measure here, and then add beats, and then of course we have the measure count here, the number in the middle that will update as well. So now we have a reference to all of those elements here, and the first thing we want to do, actually the very first thing we want to do after this, we want to get a variable that we always want to know what time it is. We always want to know the BPM, the beats per minute. So let's make one of those. Let's just call it BPM. And we're going to set that to 140 because that's what it's going to be when you start before you do anything. And then, of course, we also want it to be in 4 like we have right here. So I'm going to make another, and we're going to call that beats per measure. And that's going to be 4 beats per measure. That looks right. And now we can go ahead and we can hook all of these things up. So first, if I go ahead and the decrease tempo button, we want, when we click that, we want this to decrease or decrement by 1 BPM every single time you click it. So let's add an event listener to that. We can go ahead and target this decrease tempo button and then add an event listener. We're listening for a click event. This, and then we're going to pass in a callback function, which in this case is going to be an arrow function. And let's write something in here. Well, first of all, we want to subtract the BPM, so I can take the BPM minus. So we're just going to decrement by 1 every time. And but then we need to update something. We need to update the tempo display because we want it to, when we click here, we want it to show up here. So we can go ahead and say tempo display, and we want the text content, we want that to be the BPM. Then we want the slider value as well. We want not only this one to update, but we also want this one to move up or down depending on if you're incrementing or decrementing. So we're going to update that one as well, and that is going to be the tempo slider that we got right up here. That one we're going to set the value. So the value is going to be equal to BPM, of course, BPM. Okay, so when I save this here, when I click this one, we should hopefully see that this one starts to move around. Actually, I'm a little bit irritated by this, that you can select something here. So I'm just gonna go back to the style CSS. And then on the whole body here, I just want to set user select none. That means you can't select anything. We don't want it. So now if I double click on this one, you cannot see that nothing is gonna be selected. So that's all. Let's go back to the app.js file, and it looks like it works. But of course, we also want to get it like, we also want to be able to increment it. So I'm gonna take this one here, just gonna copy it, and we're gonna do the exact same thing almost for the increase tempo button. So we're just gonna write increase here, and we're gonna add the event listener, and we wanna actually increment it this time. So ++ instead. And we're just gonna update it. We're gonna save, and this is gonna work. This is gonna work just fine. But if you get down here, nothing is gonna happen. It's still gonna be 136. But if I go all the way down here, we set it to not go under, I think 20 or 40. And as I click all the way down to past 50, and we're in the 40s now, we don't want it to exceed 20. So we don't want to play like if I go past, like it's going to be negative numbers, and that's not really possible, right? So we're going to have to add a check up here in these, and one way to do that, I can go if the BPM is less than 20, then we can just go ahead and return out of the function. And we can do kind of the same thing. Take this one, gonna add it to the increment, and instead we are going to say less than 280. Okay, so that should hopefully work now, and it doesn't. That kind of makes sense because it's BPM, not BMP. So BPM and BPM. Okay, just like that. Then it should work. Okay, get all the way down here, and when we get to 20, it should not be able to continue past that. We'll see in just a second here as we move down towards 20. Suspense. It's tedious. Okay, we can go down to 19. So let's just say less than or equal to here, and the same for this one here. So that should work now. Anyways, I hope you trust me on that, and we'll find any bugs later when we continue with this. But of course, we also want to get the tempo slider, and that is this one here, and that is this one here. So we want to update as well when we move that around. So I'm gonna take the tempo slider, add an event listener to that, and we are going to listen for an event. Let's just try to listen for a change event, because every time it changes, we want to do something. We want to update, and as well as before, we're gonna make an arrow function, and then in here we are going to, let's see, we just want to set the BPM to the value of the tempo slider. So tempo slider dot value. Let's see what happens then. So nothing's gonna happen now, of course, but actually we can see if I click here, it changes there. But we also want to update the display. So that is going to be tempo display, and text content will be equal to the BPM, not the BMP. And we want this tempo slider value also to be equal to the BPM. So its own value. I'm just gonna set its own value again. So now we can, oops, nothing is happening. What's going on? BPM, BMP. I don't know why I want to do that all the time. Sorry about that. I can move it around up and down, but I don't see it updating when I'm actually sliding, and I would like that. That would be nice. So instead of the change, if I use input instead, on input, it's gonna fire on every tick. So if I drag this knob here, you can see as I drag it, it'll increment by 1. And if we're here on 74, 73, we're to 20 here, and now we can go all the way up here, 280. We're not allowed to exceed 280. So that's perfect. Now that has been hooked up. Let's continue. So the next thing we want to do here, we're not going to hook up the start and stop button yet, because we don't yet have a metronome that'll actually play any sounds or anything like that. So let's just get this to work first. And we're going to do that kind of in the same way. So subtract beats. That's the one we got right here. I'm going to add an event listener. It's going to be a click event. And it's going to fire this function here. Actually, we're just going to take beats per measure. Beast ATS per measure. And that is this one here. It's set to 4 initially. And we're just going to set that not equal to anything, but we're just going to increment it. Actually not, because this is subtract. Okay. Then we're going to update the measure count. So that is this one here, and we got that right here. So we're going to say measure count text content equals beats per measure. Let's do the same for the add, and that's going to be add beats event listener click, and then we're going to increment instead of go in the other direction. And this is going to be exactly the same here. So let's see if that works. It does. So, but okay, I can see that I'm actually able to go to -1, and I can go up to like 100 million. So we don't want to do that. We want to add a check here as well. So if beats per measure is the least amount of measures we want, or beats in a measure is 2. So if it is less than or equal to 2, then we are also just going to return here. Okay, and then we are going to do the same for the adding part, which is going to be greater than or equal to 12. Then we're also going to return. So let's see if that works. Now it's down to 4 again after I save. It doesn't exceed 2, or it goes under 2, and it doesn't exceed 12. So that's great. So now we are pretty much set up. But as you can see here, it kind of looks a little bit, we're doing many of the same things here. We're updating the text content and the tempo slider value many different times here. So maybe we should pull that out into a function of its own, so we don't have to, so we can just update the metronome and the display. So let's create that function called update metronome. And we want to, every time we update something in the metronome, we want to run this function here from all of the other event listener callback functions we have up here. So what are we doing here? Let's see. We take this tempo display and we set that equal to BPM, which is a global variable. And then we also take the tempo slider value and set that to the BPM. So this is what's happening here. It's just updating everything, and we can actually just take this one, update metronome, and then we can put it here every time we have this one and this one, and where we have this one as well up here. Yeah, and we wanna, this one has nothing to do with that. So let's save that and see if it still works. So it does still work. Let's try to take it all the way down to 20, and this still works as well. And another thing that is a little bit irritating is that we test this everywhere. So we can have another function called maybe validate input, validate BPM, validate tempo. Yeah, let's call it validate tempo. So function validate tempo, and that's just gonna do the same thing here. So we're gonna say if tempo BPM is less than or equal to 20, and then we're gonna take this one as well. If it's greater than, we're also just gonna return. So let's save that, and we're just going to take this validate tempo and call that after we update the BPM. So here and here and here. I forgot to put semicolons here, not that it really matters, but that's what I like to do. So we cannot go under 20, and we cannot exceed 280 either. So that's fine. An important thing to be aware of here that this one is just returning here, but actually when you call a helper function like this, we have the validate tempo here, it will actually return here and continue. So if there's something you don't want to do after that, you should instead throw an error. So instead of just returning from this function here, when you return, it'll go back here and it'll continue to update the metronome here. But in this case, it's okay. But usually what you want to do is you want to throw an error because that is not going to go back. It's just going to break out of everything. So it depends on what kind of check you're doing. But if you're doing something that updates something that you're validating here and you're not supposed to update it, then you should throw an error instead of just returning. So that's a topic for another day, but it's important to know a little bit about that. There's one thing that we forgot. We have this text here that I would like to change. I would like it like if it's between 20 and some other number, we want it to be displaying something and then something else from here, just for fun, you know. But I'm just gonna put in some crazy stuff here, and we want to do that inside our update metronome as well, because I put this in before because something was going on I didn't know. But here we can go ahead and we can update the tempo text. So we already have this this tempo text up here, and what I want to do, I just want to set it to an initial value. So right down here, I'm going to say let's call it tempo text string. Maybe not the best word, but whoops. And that is going to be equal to, let's just say, medium. So it'll initially display medium here, and then every time we want to also like set the value to that, or actually we could just go ahead and put it in here, so we don't need to do that. So I can just set medium here. All right, I'm gonna save that. Now it says medium, but it's also set here just for good measures. So every time we update the metronome, we're gonna take exactly what we just put up here. We're gonna take the tempo text. We're gonna take the text content. We're gonna set that equal to this one here, to the tempo text string. But now it's just gonna be medium every time we do something. So that's not going to be interesting, so it's going to be medium everywhere here. But it's set every time we update the metronome. But here, we should probably just update the texts depending on the ranges that we just display here. I'm just going to put in some crazy ranges here, and then I'm going to put in some different texts, and then I'm going to explain what I did. All right, so I just pasted in this this text right here, and that is what I'm doing here. I'm just checking if the BPM is less than or equal to 40, then the tempo text should be super slow, and if it's between 40 and 80, it should be something else, and 80 and 120, all the way up to 280, and then it's going to change accordingly to that. So I just need some nice semicolons here to make that look better. So that's a way we can update those. If you notice, I'm actually using double quotes here because I have a single quote here. So just to make it look good, I use double quotes on all of them. I should probably get into the habit of using that everywhere, but it's an old habit using single quotes. Anyways, let's continue with this here. I'm going to save this, and we're going to update and see what's happening here. So actually, we don't have medium anymore. Now it's called nice and steady here. So I'm just going to take that, and in here, we're just going to, instead of medium, nice and steady. So super slow, getting there, nice and steady, rock and roll, funky stuff. Relax, dude. And Eddie Van Halen. So that means you're playing really fast. So so yes, it's working right now, but we need to move on and actually get a sound out of this. It's not much fun if it doesn't work. So when we click on the start button, we wanna hear a metronome. We wanna hear a beat. So let's get into that in the next video. See you there.